In August of 2017, Christopher Gregor was studying for his master's degree at Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore, Maryland. And he was also employed by Urban Teachers, which was a company that employed people to teach in urban areas. When he found out he was being sued for child support for a child he had never met, nor did he know he fathered. And that's where our story begins. Once again, I'm Mario Gallucci, along with Andrea, and we represent Christopher. And although Ms. Schron just gave you a tidy little box with a little bow around it, that is far from what we believe the evidence is going to show you. As a matter of fact, the judge just told you that nothing Ms. Schron said is evidence. As a matter of fact, nothing I'm telling you right now is evidence. The only evidence you're going to hear is going to come right from that chair. And I'm going to tell you right now that our version of this evidence looks nothing like Ms. Schron's evidence. The evidence is going to show that Christopher was notified by a court document that he had to take a paternity test, and that was in 2017. You will hear that by court and whatever, by 2018, 2019, he learned that he was the father of Corey in order to pay child support. But he decided he wasn't going to just do that. He wasn't going to just pay child support. He was going to be a father. And he, along with his family, decided that they were going to embrace Corey and bring them into his life. At the time that Christopher learned he was Corey's father, the mother, Brianna, was living with her mother and another individual. And you will learn that that individual and Brianna split up. And it was right after that split up that they notified Christopher that he owed them child support. You will hear that Christopher decided to move in with his family in Monroe, New Jersey, right here. His father David, his mother Carolyn, and they took care of this young boy. They bought him a bicycle. They taught him how to ride, taught him how to play soccer, taught him how to play baseball, taught him how to play football. And at that time, they shared custody with the Micciolos. Then, somewhere around March of 2020, because of some challenges that Brianna Micciolo had, she no longer had custody of Corey, and custody went to Mr. Gregor. He was given full parental custody, and Ms. Micciolo was not to have any visitation with Corey. And as those challenges continued, your evidence will show that Rebecca Micciolo, Brianna's mother, asked to have visitation, which was granted. And at that time, Brianna was still not able to interact in Corey's life. You will see that through time, Brianna came back into Corey's life, thanks in part to the Gregor family, who assisted her somewhat to get through her challenges, and then agreed slowly to give her visitation of Corey, and they did. Once all of this happened, though, you will see that the Micciolos and the Gregors became like the Hatfields and the McCoys. It's unbelievable what you're going to hear in this case is evidence between the two families going back and forth over this poor child. But you will see, and what I will agree with, is what Ms. Schron just told you about a treadmill video. You're going to see that on March 20th, Christopher takes that young boy into a gym that's part of his residential complex. And in that gym, you see him put Corey on the treadmill, and he begins to work out while he's watching him from across the room. At some point, you're going to see Christopher go over to that treadmill and speed it up. And you're going to see Corey fall. And you're going to see him pick that boy up 6 times. And 6 times put him back on the treadmill. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're not going to like him. And I don't care if you like him. When you see that video, you're going to be horrified. You're going to be mortified. But I'm telling you right now that the evidence you're going to see of Corey's death had absolutely nothing to do with that treadmill. As a matter of fact, the treadmill incident was on March 20th. And between March 20th and April 2nd, Corey spent a significant amount of time with Brianna, spent a significant amount of time with Christopher, and actually tried out for a flag football team here in Ocean County, and did so well in the tryout that the coach actually had discussions with Christopher to raise him up a level. You will hear that Brianna became suspicious of some bruises. Bruises to his chest, bruises to his arms. And I submit to you, those bruises did occur from treadmill. They occurred from football. They occurred from boys being boys. You'll hear testimony that on a regular basis, Christopher would take him to a field across the street and play football with him like any other dad, that he practiced with him for this tryout. You hear testimony that Christopher himself was actually an athlete who competed in football. You will hear that when she sees the bruises, Ms. Micciolo, that she makes an emergency application to the court to regain the full custody, by the way, which she never, ever had gotten back from March of 2020. And that application was denied. So, she goes to DCP&P. They start an investigation. They tell her, take her to the pediatrician. And she chooses Ivy Pediatrics. She goes to Ivy Pediatrics, and they do an exam. They don't really find too much wrong with him, except he has bruises. They do blood work. They do tests. Healthy. Just like Micciolo told you. Healthy. But they recommended to her that she follow up and that they would want to take her to Jersey Shore Medical Center to follow up on a child abuse allegation from the treadmill. You will see that Corey disclosed to the doctor at Ivy that my dad made me run on the treadmill, that I fell on the treadmill, and I also fell playing football. You will hear that she went against the advice of Ivy Pediatrics and left. And she took him to another hospital, community health center, I believe it's called. And at that hospital, they did another evaluation. And during that evaluation, Corey was healthy, had a few bruises, but still suspected child abuse. We recommend to you that we take Corey to Jersey Shore Medical Center. What does Brianna do? She leaves the hospital against medical advice. She leaves. She does at some point now take him by herself to Jersey Shore Medical Center. where he undergoes an evaluation. And you're going to hear that when he was at Jersey Shore Medical Center, they found that he had a possibility of something called sepsis, which you'll understand from a doctor. I'm not a doctor, I'm a lawyer. But doctors are going to testify here. And you're going to understand that sepsis is your body's reaction to an infection. And it's a rapid response to that infection. And that rapid response, you're going to hear from doctors, will tell you, can show a child is loopy, disoriented, nauseous. And Jersey Shore Medical Center told her, Brianna, leave the child here. And she did not. She took Corey home, signed papers against medical advice. She took him home. So she's running from hospital to hospital to hospital, making emergency applications, you're going to hear, making complaints to DCP&P. So what does she do next? She's so concerned. You're going to hear how concerned she is. The evidence is going to show you how concerned she is for her son's safety. You're going to hear evidence that she was so concerned, she brought him to Christopher. Because her visitation was over. Remember, she didn't have full custody. Her visitation was over. And you're going to hear evidence that when Corey came home, he was tired. And Christopher did not find that to be unusual. Because often, by the way, Christopher lived in Barnegat, Brianna lived up in the Englishtown area. You'll hear testimony that actually, at some point, they were together and actually looking at houses together. You can hear evidence of that. But when he arrived, he was tired. And yes, Christopher did not find that unusual because he would often come back from Brianna's house and he was tired. So he let him go to bed. And he slept. And he's on the phone with a woman, I believe her name is Marcy Brogner, and they're making plans to go on a date. And he's talking to her about what's going on in the house, that his son is there, that he's tired, that he's sleeping. And then you're going to hear testimony, I believe, from his mother, Christopher's mother, Carolyn. Because at some point, Christopher gets concerned because Corey's now been sleeping for a long time. So he calls his mom. Mom, I'm concerned. Corey has been sleeping quite some time now. And his mother just said to him, it happens every single time he comes back from their house. Let the kid sleep. So let him sleep. And then he ordered Grubhub. He ordered a Happy Meal, assuming that at some point Corey would awaken. And he did. He woke, said he wasn't feeling well, he had some milk, and he went back to bed on the couch. You're going to see that Christopher took a picture of Corey on that couch and sent it to this woman, Marcy Brogner, about how Corey was sound asleep on the couch. You're going to hear testimony that when he did awake, he was complaining of leg pain, serious enough that Christopher was concerned. began to throw up. You're going to hear testimony that he was loopy. You're going to hear testimony that he looked like he was drunk. And you're going to see Christopher drive him to Southern Ocean Medical Center. And you're going to see him pull up to the emergency department. And you're going to see him carry that little boy into a hospital. And you're going to see him standing there holding that child in his arms, which seems like hours, before anybody comes to help him. And they do. And they come and they help him and they take Corey away. And they start to do some testing. And then they decide they need to do a CAT scan. And while during the CAT scan, Corey seizes, goes into cardiac arrest. Life-saving techniques are now used to try to revive him. And he dies. And it sucks. This is a kid. No child should die. No child should die. But it's not murder. And you're going to hear testimony from doctors and experts. You're going to hear testimony from Dr. Larkin, who, by the way, Dr. Larkin has no skin in the game. This is a doctor that comes to the hospital. He's from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner here in Ocean County. He has no idea what the relationship is between Christopher and Brianna and Christopher and Rebecca. He's got no clue. He just evaluates the child by science and medicine. Dr. Larkin found that Corey's blood results from Southern Ocean showed incredibly high white blood count, high glucose, and high lactic acid. And said that's all indicative of sepsis caused by an infection. The same sepsis that Jersey Shore Medical Center told Brianna Micciolo, do not take this child from the hospital. He possibly has sepsis. We need to evaluate him. Chief Medical Examiner here in Ocean County, his evaluation, you're going to hear evidence, sepsis, infection, not murder. A CAT scan ordered after Corey's death by Dr. Larkin, evidence will show, showed the possibility of pneumonia. Pneumonia is an infection, and an infection causes sepsis. So the Ocean County Medical Examiner, the first person to evaluate Corey, which, by the way, is 12 days after the treadmill. 12 days. You're going to hear testimony that when he gets to Southern Ocean Medical Center, there's no report of any additional bruising since March 20th. You're going to see there's no signs of, I believe Ms. Schroen said, I hit with a baseball bat, stepped on, I don't know what she said, whatever she said. You're going to hear evidence that doesn't show any proof of any of that. As a matter of fact, their own chief medical examiner, who did the autopsy, was inconclusive and could not come up with the cause or manner of death yet, pending investigation and toxicology reports. And he said, their chief medical examiner said that the injuries sustained to Corey were all due to life-saving techniques. he left the hospital. He was distraught. He was upset. He told the nurse, "I need privacy." And he left. You're going to hear testimony that he called his parents immediately. Said Corey passed. They, Dave and Carolyn, you will hear, went immediately to the hospital and called the Stafford Police Department to tell them their grandson had just died in the hospital. You need to do an investigation here. They reported it. What did Brianna and Rebecca do immediately? Talk about him leaving. Rebecca and Brianna immediately turned to social media, where they tortured and crucified that man, posting a picture the same day of him in a prison outfit behind bars, wishing him death. They formed a chat group on Facebook dedicated to Corey, but evidence is going to show it really wasn't dedicated to Corey. It was dedicated to harassing the Gregor family. So much so, you're going to hear testimony that both Brianna and Rebecca were arrested in Monroe, New Jersey, and pled guilty for harassing Dave and Carolyn Gregor by protesting in front of their house, putting up posters on telephone.
Judge.
Can you approach that, Brooke?
Yes, please. Thank you.
So first, the parties dispute whether or not there was a disposition of any kind of finding against the Micciolos. That has not previously been presented to me. So what I'm going to do is, when that's presented, I'm going to make a ruling on whether that's admissible. Typically, municipal court level offenses are not admissible as proof of anything. Only if someone is convicted of a crime and they testify as a witness, and by a crime I mean a superior court level offense, would that evidence come in, and then I would give you an instruction as to how you analyze that conviction based upon the evidence. Here it's undisputed that there's no such conviction for a crime. So I'm going to ask you to disregard that reference right now that there's been some disposition in municipal court. If and when we come to that point, I'm going to make a ruling about what, if anything, you're allowed to consider in relation to that disposition in municipal court. At that time, if I allow it into evidence, I'll give you a specific instruction, and you're only to consider it for that limited purpose. But at this point, there's clearly no criminal conviction, so you should strike that part from your recollection. Mr. Gallucci is going to move on. I appreciate your time and attention. Mr. Gallucci.
So you're going to hear testimony that it was as a result of threats made to the Gregor family that Christopher stayed away. He was afraid to come back to New Jersey. But when contacted by his family that he was wanted for questioning, you will see GPS that shows him actually heading back to New Jersey to speak with the police. He is stopped, and I believe it's Alcoa, Tennessee. Not because they were looking for him. They were looking for his car. He was free to leave. They took his car because they had a search warrant. And they searched his car, and they found a cell phone, maybe some other things. And then he came back to New Jersey. Didn't stay away. Didn't run away. You're going to hear testimony from 2, maybe 3 experts. You're going to hear testimony from Dr. Andrew, who's a forensic pathologist, I believe, from New Hampshire. I believe they're going to call him as an expert. You're going to hear from our expert, Dr. Michael Bodden, who's here in New York, and they both completely disagree on the result of Corey's death. Dr. Bodden, supported by medical records, is going to testify that Corey died from sepsis as a result of pneumonia, natural causes, that the bruises from March 20th had absolutely nothing to do with his death, had nothing to do with his sepsis, and that any bruising he had now was absolutely directly related to the life-saving techniques at the hospital in Southern Ocean Methodist. Now I get to that point where I want you to remember that you guys were chosen by all of us out of hundreds of people we went through. And we chose you because we all believed you would be fair, you would be impartial, you would listen to their evidence. I don't have to give you any evidence. I'm going to give it to you, but I don't have to. And I know you will listen. And this is important, as Judge Ryan explains to you all the time. This is one of the most important things you could do as a citizen. He uses the example that our men and women are fighting in foreign countries and dying. So you can sit here right now. This is an unbelievable, not only civic responsibility, but a human responsibility. You, as a human, are going to judge another human. And that is an awesome responsibility. And I know you all take it very seriously. Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, before we go any further, it's my function to give you some instruction on the multiple charges you're going to consider. This is a relatively brief instruction. It's not like my opening instructions to you. It's only a page and a half, so